an 18-year-old boy does not slot nicely into at a mining camp generally. They've got a lot to learn and they have to learn it very quickly. They don't make concessions. On the drill rig, you learn very quickly and you have to become a good worker. You have to focus. You have to realise other people are relying on you. I think a lot of younger men need that sort of experience. The really interesting thing is I look back at that kid, really, and I'm quite impressed about how strong he was in the end. And I look at him and I'm really quite impressed, and I don't know if I could do that again. And also I think I'm really lazy compared to him these days.
Welcome to the Beers with a Miner podcast. My name is Mad Mumsy and I've been driving the huge dump trucks in Australian open cut mines for over 10 years now. I wish I had $1 for everyone who said to me, "How does a little thing like you drive those big trucks? Oh, you must be rich. How do I get a job doing that?" My mining friends are asked these questions all the time too. This is what started the Mad Mumsy journey to share stories and tips from living a mining lifestyle and to let others know what it's really like. Tune in each episode as I sit down for a relaxed chat, usually over a few beers, with a fellow miner. Women and blokes with various experience, roles and opinions share their lessons and stories with you. Not everyone is cut out to be a miner, but why not? What does it take to thrive and survive in this industry? Now, let's dig in. Get it? Dig? Mining? Oh, crack me up. Hello, my name is Mad Mumsy. Thank you so much for joining me for another happy hour episode. In this chat, we talk with Brett Jenkins. He's the author of the book A Boy Miner. You may have already seen it and perhaps even read it. But this conversation is something that went a lot deeper, and I really enjoyed talking to him and digging in to his story and how he got into the mines to start with at 18 years old after being way out of his comfort zone and just chucked in there underground pretty much as a driller. So if you want to hear some good underground stories, we have a few for you in this chat. But it's quite reflective, and we also discuss about his challenges. Should he leave? Should he stay? Why did he leave in the end? He had a few changes while he was actually working, which might happen to you. You go in, say you start as a driller, but you might end up working as something else. And that is actually quite common, and you might not have any choice in the matter. So it was really interesting to talk with Brett about that. I really enjoyed the part where we were talking about the effects that absence and isolation can have on workers and their families, especially on a young fella who hasn't got a girlfriend yet, or he had one, but, you know, did he keep her and marry her? You'll have to listen to this episode with Brett. I really enjoyed it. I want to get in, so sit back and relax. Just you, me and Brett, and enjoy this chat. Hello. In this happy hour episode of Beers with a Miner podcast, I am chatting with Brett Jenkins, author of A Boy Miner and now a stay-at-home dad. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Brett.
Thanks, Leanne. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
And I'm excited to finally hear all about your mining journey, why you were inspired to write your book, A Boy Miner, and what it's like for you now being a stay-at-home dad. And we'll uncover this as the story goes on, but what else you're doing as well, other than just that. Not that just being a stay-at-home dad is a thing. I know being a stay-at-home mum, well, I know what that was like. So, but before we do that, as this podcast is called the Beers with a Miner podcast, I like to start these happy hour episodes with my guests sharing their favourite beverage and also their favourite time to enjoy it. It could be a beer, wine, spirit, or perhaps even a cup of tea. What is yours, Brett?
Well, at the moment, I'm just enjoying a Bundaberg ginger beer. That's what I'm drinking mostly at the moment, and I like to have it probably Friday afternoons is a good time. I will probably prefer when the footy season's on even more. That's a good time to have one.
Do you have it in a glass with ice or just because that's in the little stubby brown bottles, isn't it? The Bundy ginger beer?
Yeah, just straight from the stubby.
Straight from the stubby.
Yeah, I just used to drink VB cans, and that was fine with me as well. Nice and simple.
Oh, VB. Oh, I only drink them when there's no other beer left. But I have been known to drink a few in my day because I drank all of mine. So you said footy there. You're based in WA, so I'm assuming that would be AFL football, not soccer, surely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The West Coast Eagles is our team.
The Eagle, is that their song? Is that their theme song? The Eagles is my team. Is that their theme?
Yeah, something like that. Close.
Something like that, isn't it? I go for the Brisbane Lions because I'm based in Queensland.
Oh, yeah.
But controversially, I also have another team and I go for the Adelaide Crows because I grew up in South Australia. So now I've got two teams and I've had that many arguments with people. You can't have two teams. Like, well, I can have as many as I want. There's no rules.
That is true. Well, a lot of us over here tried to be a Freo supporter and an Eagles supporter, and that has not worked. So you stick with one team, keep the rivalry up.
That's like trying to be a Port Adelaide supporter and a Crows supporter. Not going to happen unless you're the premier and you have to kind of keep everyone voting for you.
That's right.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So do you go to the football?
Yep, we're members, so we go every fortnight. So we're looking forward to the season starting again. All
right, so let's talk a little bit about mining. So as the book title would suggest, A Boy Miner, you started very young in the mines, as did my sister actually. She was 18 when she started as a cleaner. So would you like to share with my listeners how you got into mining and what you were doing and how old you were?
Sure. Well, I was 18 when I started and I'd finished high school and I was I had what we might describe as a gap year. So I was going to go to uni and my uncle just sort of offered me a job. He said, because I was looking a bit sort of lazy, I suppose, maybe at home, and I wasn't doing much, and he sort of offered me a job. I was really lucky. And I was a bit wary because I was young and I was a very skinny kid. I weighed about 65 kilos, I think. And, he's a pretty big guy himself. And I thought, well, that's not really going to be me. And it was fly in, fly out. But it was a hard opportunity to knock back. And he told me how much money I could earn. And I just said, okay, I'll have a go. So then I went along, I was the youngest there probably by at least maybe 6 to 8 years, I think. I didn't sort of really, I look back now and realise how young I actually was and quite naive and maybe unprepared just for living away from home even, which was, I was still living with my folks. So moving away for 2 weeks. And being very, working amongst men. I mean, it was just men at the site that I was working with. It was a very strange experience. Very, I had to grow up quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And back then, 20 years ago, different story the way it is now. A lot more women out there. There's a lot more strictness, if that's the right word, about how you all deal with each other back then. Even when I started, well, that's getting on 20 years in the end, I suppose, people could yell at you. They could, be racist, discriminatory, everything. You can't, in most places, you shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. And they could just treat you however they wanted back then, and you had to either try and stand up and give it back or not deal with it really and leave, or sadly a lot of people just can't hack it and commit suicide and stuff, which is heartbreaking, but it's a reality, and that's exactly why I do what I do. And my podcast is so that when people go in, they can go in with more open eyes as to what it could be like out there, and if they're even cut out for it. Yeah.
Well, that's when I've been. So I after I'd finished the book, and I had some people ask me questions about what I think about it, why did I do it, and that sort of stuff. And I had to think a little bit more about my goal for the book. And it's funny, in WA particularly, and it's probably a lot like maybe in Queensland as well, is the expectation that mining is a job that everybody could do and everybody has the opportunity. And, I mean, nearly every family has something to do with mining. So it's really interesting that no matter your personality, you would go and do fly in, fly out. And it's definitely not suited for everyone. And I would myself say I was never really suited to it. But it was a very good opportunity. It's a really good opportunity for anyone who maybe isn't going to university or isn't doing a trade. You didn't need to have necessarily the educational background. So it was open for everyone, but not everybody could do it or should do it. And that's why there is, without getting into the sort of some of the negative aspects too early, but there is a lot of divorce. There was a lot of drinking. There was a lot of issues, and I think that's because there's a lot of people working there that were doing it because of expectations, and their family did it. But I found it a very hard life working fly in, fly out. For me, that was really the equaliser between all the people who worked in the mine, no matter what job they were doing, being away from your family for those 2 weeks. Everybody felt that sort of stress, and and no matter what age. I was quite young, but I know some of the family men, particularly that I worked with. That would have been really hard, especially when I reflect on that now as a dad myself. 20 years on, it would have been very tough. But again, it's one of the more popular opportunities in WA. You go mining. It's and you can make some pretty good money.
I totally agree with you. The same, very similar here in Queensland as well, and even to a certain extent in New South Wales, because they've got a lot of coal mining down there as well. But there's, I suppose, not to the extent, especially here where we are, like central Queensland. Say if you're central Queensland, mining is such a huge part of life. And I know WA, like you say, with all of the so many people connected in one way or another to mining. And you said earlier about when he told you how much you could be earning, and sort of money that you just can't get if you, like you say, if you haven't been to college or uni, you haven't got a trade in the real world per se. It's something that, like me as a mum who'd worked in a pet shop, could go and earn $100,000 just by rocking up there with no experience and learning how to drive a truck and all the other machines and that later. So what was it that you did when you first went in?
Well, I first started as a underground driller's offsider. I then moved on to a drill myself, and one of the events that occurred to me, I got a hernia while I was on the drill rigs, and they said, okay. They put me on a truck for a day, and I just to sort of light duties. They said, and then they just sort of said, oh well, actually you're just going to be a truck driver from now on. So I was just changed immediately from being on the drills onto the trucks, and which I do discuss a bit is the drilling side and the mining side. We might describe as the mining side. They're quite different areas, and it was quite a big shift because the drillers do kind of stick together a bit. The miners stick together. So I was really just thrown onto what felt like a very different crew. So I drove trucks for a year, and then I was working on the service crew, which they run things like vent bags, the water lines. They help with the all the cabling, sumps. They do quite a lot of jobs, putting up fans and things like that, which I quite enjoyed that job. It was a bit more diverse. Yeah, so that's really the scope of what I was doing. And
with the hernia as a driller, because there's I don't know if this is just a perception I have. I've seen drillers. I totally agree that they are normally in open cut anyway, a smaller crew. They drillers definitely stick together. We used to call them stinking bloody drillers, but some of them were my best friends, like we were bonehead truckies to them. But we all have our little words. But the hernia, is that because it was like a really physical job? For those that don't know how physical it can be.
Well, it can be very physical, and there's if you're as I say, I was I've got a pretty small frame, so there's a lot of twisting movements. There's a lot of things you could do. Just if you're slightly wrong when you're working with, say, 15, 20, 25 kilo rods, thereabouts, you can just do something slightly wrong, and you can hurt your back. You can do lots of injuries. There's a lot of downtime, or there's a lot of time when the drilling happening and there might not be much work. But if you have a rod pull, that is quite intense. One of the rigs I worked on, you had to pull the rig out by using a set of Stilsons and just basically latching on and just trying to yank them out of the wall because the holes were very deep. So very easily to get an injury. I didn't actually know how I got my hernia. It just sort of appeared, and so it could have been from something else, but it was during my stint away, and there was a bulge there, and I had to tell them about it. But yeah, it can be very, very intense, and it's one of those jobs, and quite a few, or a lot of mining jobs, especially underground, when you're racing to get it ready for the blast. It can be quite intense. On the drilling side, it's when you're doing a rod pull or you're changing it out. It's very intense again, and you're trying to go quickly, and you get paid by the meterage as well. So you're always trying to make a bit more money, try to go as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So you're not always maybe taking care of your body as you should.
And sadly, that's when shortcuts can happen, and also accidents and little things can happen along the way, but as well as injuries. Did you end up having your hernia operated on, or did it just go away?
No, I had to have an operation. So, and that's when I came back on light duties. That's when they said, and what actually happened was they put me on light duties for a stint, and then they sent me back underground straight onto a drill rig, one of the harder drill rigs for some reason, and I felt another twinge. I told them about it, and then that's when they put me on the truck. They said, we're moving you on, basically. So, which I think I was more frustrated about because it was a pay cut more than anything. So I was losing money.
Which you're not out there to lose money, are you? It's not the plan.
No.
So,
I mean,
I was just going to say, in my world, getting put on a truck for light duties, the track's that bloody rough and getting smashed with rocks and everything. That's the last place you'd go for light duties. They'd put us truckies on light duties. We'd go and do some filing in the office or something. Maybe drive around in my vehicle, or just do one hot seat for an hour and then get out of the truck. But are the trucks underground, is it quite a smooth track that you're on?
Not necessarily. I think, but for them it was more about just as long as I'm not lifting anything above 15 kilos, I suppose.
Yeah.
I did for light duties for a little while. I did little jobs, like I did have to wash the boss's utes, and I sharpened up drill bits, and I did. So for a fortnight, I did some pretty ordinary sort of menial jobs, but that's when they sort of say, well, we want you to get off that, so we'll put you on the trucks. But it was really, they just didn't want me to lift anything that was too heavy anymore.
That's the difference about what's going on inside this crazy brain. Is a hernia from lifting heavy things, whereas I'm thinking bashing around in a truck is more like if you'd hurt your back, that'd be a different scenario. So The hernia, it didn't necessarily hurt that much.
but it can lead to other issues. But that's the thing. It wasn't really about wasn't about pain. It was more about re-injuring. That would have been the issue.
Yeah. Well, at least it sounds like they did the right thing as far as managing it.
Yeah, and I was quite happy because I didn't mind a change. One of the things that you get with truck driving underground, you get to see a lot more of the mine. I realised I hadn't. So when you work on the drill rigs, you go to one sort of area, and it's usually a very quiet area of the mine. And so I got to see a lot more of what's going on. Actually, I'd been working in a mine for about probably 2 years, and I really didn't know much about what was going on the mining side because they are quite separate. I got to see a little bit more about what was going on.
And do you get to come out of the hole as well? Like you get the stuff, take it outside the little creepy little portal. Remember seeing them in the high walls, like, ooh, there's yowies down there.
Well, that's probably one of the nice things is you do get to come out of the hole, for every run, and go drop it off and head back down. Probably the only thing that is difficult about the portal is sometimes you go from blazing sunlight straight into the dark. So it takes a bit of a while for your eyes to adjust. You can wear sunnies and things like that to help. But if a ute's coming out just at that point when you're about to go in and it's kind of like a complete darkness, then you've got to be a bit wary.
I can totally relate to that, actually. Where I go shopping, I go into the car park, the underneath car park, and there is a blinding moment where you just can't see anything. Like, I hope no one's coming around that corner. But now I've started I'm just going to have a bit of a pause moment here and just let my eyes catch up because you just don't know. So I can totally relate to that. What was it like for you the first time you ever went underground as an 18-year-old who never been out from home much?
Oh, it was very different than what I expected. It's much bigger. I think one of my own experiences in an underground mine is if you go to Kalgoorlie, there's the Hainault mine that you can go down. It's old, it's no longer used, but it's very sort of tight sort of areas. When you look at some of the shaft mines as well, it looks quite confined, and I was a little bit worried about whether I was going to feel a bit claustrophobic but then you realise, they're driving trucks underground. There's a lot of room to move. And the strange thing about it is, for me, when you go down there, I don't think you really think about it much after that. Every now and again I just thought, I'm a couple of 100 metres underground. But other than that, you just think of it as quite a normal environment. I don't know, you get quite used to it. And and as a work environment, it was really, it felt the same as probably anywhere that you work. And if you don't look at the walls and you don't think about collapses or anything like that, which you don't necessarily do anyway, it was quite a normal environment.
I think I felt a bit like that when I first started with the big trucks. Well, when I first started in mining, everything was big. Like, everything's so massive. But the thing is everything's big. So the roads are big, the trucks are big, the graders are big, the diggers big. The only things that little are the troopies that we all had to get into. And the sky was big because, you could just being out there in the middle of central, where was I, New South Wales then, and just looking up and to see all the stars and everything was just huge. Even the sky, I'll never ever forget that first night shift round that I did. Yeah, it's amazing. And then after a while, it's like, it's just another truck. It's just like you say, it's your workplace. So whatever you're doing, you get used to it. Did you do night shift as well?
Yeah, night shift. I absolutely struggled with from the very beginning. I could not get a good sleep. I think I only worked in mining for 4.5 years. It was in the end, and all of that was day and night shift. But I don't think I got one good night's sleep the whole time. And about when I was driving trucks, particularly, it was about 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when I I just start needing to sleep. One thing I talk about in the book is this moment where I have to call my levels as I'm going down, and then all of a sudden I'd be at 2 or 3 levels down, and I can't remember how I got there. So I'm in a sense just sleep driving, and it's lucky the traffic's a lot quieter on night shift, but I realised it was really quite dangerous, but it was not. We weren't necessarily encouraged to have a lot of breaks back then. And I don't think a coffee or 2 or 3 coffees would necessarily make a difference. I just needed a decent sleep. But the thing is, it's the body. You realise the body needs its sleep. It's very hard to change its pattern. Some people can do it, and some people can sleep very easily. But I think when you're working on that 5-6 hours, and then driving for 12 hours, and just driving is when you're going very slowly, or in the trucks where you've got the aircon going or something. It's sort of an environment where it can make you feel a bit sleepy anyway. So it was night shift was always quite tough.
How many breaks did they let you have in those 12 hours back then? Did you get like 2 hour breaks or 1 or?
No, it was just the one break for crib at sort of about 1 in the morning. You could easily drive for 5 hours straight. The only thing I suppose that it breaks it up is that you're doing a lot more runs. So when you get to the bottom, you can wait a little bit, but that's you're just sitting in the truck for 5 hours straight, have a break, and then maybe another 5 hours at least. But you don't, and that was for me. Probably I wanted to really impress with the amount of loads I got as well, so I wasn't willing to take a break, and I think a lot of people were like that. If you want to get a promotion, you need to come up at the end of the shift with the most amount of loads out. So the idea of pulling off, going to the mess and grabbing a coffee never really entered my head, and I didn't want to sort of show that I was kind of like, I need some time off, because that was really sort of discouraged, I suppose. But there was also something I would set for myself, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. You're competitive with yourself. As for a lot of people, that's how they manage to be able to keep doing it, is to find the little things in what they have to do over and over and over and over again to make it, like for you, if it's competitive with the other people or whatever. I found that a lot in the open cut as well. I grew up racing mini bikes, so a lot of times it was kind of like, he's catching me, he's not going to get me at the dump and all of that. At first, when I was learning, I'd pull over at the dump and let them pass me because they were scaring me, they were stalking me out, and I needed to think and concentrate and take my time. And that was one of the best tips I got. If someone's doing that, just pull over up at the dump, let them go. Because some people just want to race the whole time, breaking all the rules. I remember one time at this one band camp, as I say it, we had this new digger, 3 new trucks, and they put us 3 ladies on the circuit, and we were all really competitive, and we were trying to get the best. It was a night shift. There was no one around. And I was like, but the other 2 girls just ended up with that couple extra loads for the day or the night. And I found out later they weren't stopping at the stop sign. There's a bloody stop sign on the hall. I'm like, what? I said, no, not that competitive, because at that exact intersection, I nearly went to pull out, and a light vehicle full of my crew went past in front of me that I hadn't seen. If that had been a giveaway sign, or if I'd chosen not to stop at that stop sign, I would have got them. And ever since then, I'm like, no, stop sign's there for a reason, mate, because you can't see, especially in our trucks, they're so high and the light vehicles are so low. And if they're moving along a road as you're coming towards the road, they just stay in the blind spot with you as you're all moving. It's not till you stop that you see it. Well, they probably see because we're so big. But, God, that's taking competitiveness too far. You want to stay safe and do whatever it is that gets you through.
Well, now that I'm a bit older, I'd be much more casual about it. I wouldn't be so competitive, and my goal, I was competitive, but I just wanted to earn my money so that, I can maybe, because I was always sort of thinking I just want to earn my money, maybe buy a house, something like that, hopefully get close to paying it off so that I could maybe finish up. So it was always, for me, is about promotion, trying to set myself these goals, which also made it a little bit easier to go back to work. If I didn't have the fly out day when I had to go back out to the mine, I was always quite depressed. It wasn't much fun to be around, so I always had to remind myself why I was going out there with those targets. Yeah, there was a lot of rash decisions. I think a couple of times where you take a corner and there's been mud on there because someone's been bogging around there, and you say, "I'll just see how it goes." I'm a bit more of a defensive driver these days. If I was on the truck, it'd be a bit different. But and the truck drivers were also competitive because nobody wants to. I mean, the truck driving was okay, but as soon as you can get promoted to service crew, charge up, or the boggers, you earn a lot more money straight away. Mm-hmm. So I think everybody, being on the truck was much less stress, and compared to, say, the much more intense jobs like charge up, for example, which was really full on, and service crew could also be a lot of work. But if you wanted to earn money and, you're going to be away for 2 weeks, you may as well try and earn as much as you can.
Do you think a big part of that competitiveness too was because you were so much younger than everyone else and you were trying to prove yourself a little bit?
There was, but I tell you what, one of the things that I sort of developed was a work ethic as well. As an 18-year-old, I was so lazy, entitled. I had no idea what real work was. I'd never worked a full day in my life, and then all of a sudden I was doing these 12-hour shifts. And I did become competitive in the sense that I did want to impress some of the older blokes, and I realised they had a lot of expectations on me, but it was a lot of it was for me as well. I unashamedly would say it was about the money more than anything. And as I say, that's the carrot when you're working fly in, fly out, earning as much as you can so that you can really go enjoy yourself when you go home, because you have because you feel like you felt like you were making quite a big sacrifice as well, spending that time away. So you want to make it as worthwhile as possible. A bit of healthy competition is also good.
Yeah. So you said the goal was to go out there and as much as you could get a house, maybe pay it off. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I got very close. Yep.
Well
it was manageable.
Yeah.
Where I could have. Thanks. I had a couple of other things help me out. I got a little payment from an injury that I had elsewhere, but I really saved my money. It's interesting. That's because I was so much younger. I really saw there was some blokes who had been out there, well into their 60s, and what I saw in them, some of the guys. I talk a lot about how there's very different personalities. Some people really love it. Some people, and that's the place they should be. Some people just seem to be there because of money, which is a bit like me. Some people just expected, they fell into it. But I saw a lot of people who were still doing the job. They'd been divorced, they were paying alimony, and they'd remarried. They got divorced again. And so for me, I thought at the time, I think I was trying to find myself a girlfriend, and I just thought this is really tough. And I learned a few lessons from probably some of the guys who I would sort of say, well, maybe they're not doing it how I would want to do it. That's why I set myself a target. It was also really for my own mental health. I was when I was coming home, I was very depressed. I mean, the first night I was back and I was wealthy, I would party, have a lot of fun, and then you realise, all my mates, all my schoolmates were at work, and I didn't really catch up because I was a lot younger than the other guys. So they were, and we were living in sort of different areas. So I was actually sort of come home and I was by myself. What's that?
Sorry, I was
married.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you got your schoolmates who are at school, other people are at work, and your crew, they're married, seeing their family. So you're stuck in just there with you and all this money. And
yeah. And so that's then coming home wasn't as much fun as well. And for me, you're really out of step with what everybody else was doing. So I talk about, some of my mates had joined indoor beach volleyball, and just a little thing like that, feeling, a bit part of that community, and you realise you sort of miss out on that, and everybody's got their things on. Then I sort of noticed that maybe I was coming home and I was actually disrupting some things. And I think a lot of the dads that I work with as well, they were felt like that as well. They'd come home and to their families, and they were really hoping that they were really looking forward to this, but they would come home and there were a lot of routines that were really important for their kids, and I think a lot of them sort of felt like they were a bit out of place and trying to find what their role was. So I think for me, one of the reasons I had always set that goal of leaving Fly in Fly Out particularly was that my breaks weren't enjoyable anymore, which I mean that's what you really look forward to. But if you're not enjoying that, and maybe you're not enjoying yourself in the mine, then it's time to leave. Yeah, that's what I realised.
So for 4.5 years, you did it for?
Yeah. Which I've seen some comments when I've sort of advertised my book, and some people sort of say, "Oh, only 4.5 years." I think that was enough. I've worked with one guy who was about 50, and I tell this story in the book. He was only there for one stint, and he left. He couldn't handle it. It happens a lot.
I've got a whole podcast episode, and it's in my course as well. It's 5 newbies I know and why they quit. They were 5 people desperate to get that dream job in the mines, and then went out there and went, oh, what? Nah, for whatever reason. There were lots of different reasons. But I guess until you try it, you don't know for yourself. But I think that's a huge point to make, and I try to make that as well. If you're out there and you don't like it, we don't have to stay. But caveat there is, if you get those golden handcuffs on, like you were talking about, with the people having to pay for this and pay for that, and, you've got the big mortgage, you've got another mortgage with another family and other kids, you got all your toys and your boats, and you can't leave. You can't pay off everything with a real job in town. And so they stay and they hate it and take it out on everyone else because they just don't want to be there anymore. But just going back to what you were saying about the guys, or the comments about only being there for 4.5 years, well, that's how long you were a boy for anyway. For all they know, the next book could be the man miner who chose to go back. Now he's grown up or something. Like, you don't listen to people like that. But I can understand totally that people would make those sort of comments, because I get all sorts of comments as well. So you just got to go, let it go.
Yeah. There's always that argument about who, and I've seen one of your podcasts, who a real miner is. It's I think it's really sort of more entertaining than anything when people talk about that. And as I say, the leveler is not whether I don't think it was whether you consider yourself a miner or not, but for me the leveler was that we're all out at this mine site. We've all flown out here. We're leaving our families for a couple of weeks at a time. We've all got that in common.
Now for a word from our sponsor, Julia Hartman and the Bantax Accounting Group. Julia's my awesome accountant. She's written 2 books with financial expert Noel Whittaker, and she's got a passion to help us miners make the most out of our hard-earned cash. She's got heaps of tips and make sure that we get every cent we are meant to get, and is right on the ball with everything. If you head to bantax.com.au/miners, that's BANTACS, you can download a free booklet all just for us miners. And there's also a spreadsheet in there that helps you check off what tools you have for your trade, like your isolation lock, work boots, 7 shirts, all of these sorts of things, and you can weigh them up and it'll tell you if you qualify weight-wise to claim your trips out to work. And that's just one of the things that they've got over there. So I strongly urge you to head to bantax.com.au/miners and see what they can do and find your nearest office as we come up to tax time. They're really on the ball, know what's going on with the tax department, and there's heaps of other free information like property investing. If you really plan on doing some great things with your money, you want to do that, right? If you want to sell your house, can save a lot of money if you find out what to do first rather than in hindsight. And Julia, she'll, make sure you get it right. And if you do it wrong and then go and see her, she'll up you in the nicest possible way, because she really cares about us and wants us to keep our money and not give it to the tax department. Anyway, head over to bantax.com.au/miners and tell them Mad Mumsy sent you. Okay, so we just had a little... Mad Mumsy had to run next door and get a beer break. So here's my favourite sound in the world. There we go. So we've heard about your mining life up till then. What was it that finally made you take the leap and actually leave and give up that money? And what the hell did you do next?
Well, it was a very particular incident that it was I had a relationship breakup, and I realised that that if I wanted to have a relationship, and I wanted to have someone to come home to, and or not even just someone to maybe start a life with, it really felt like that just wasn't going to happen. And you have to have a really understanding partner to wait around for a few weeks. But as I say, I was quite young, so at the time, my girlfriend, she was 19, 20, I was 20, 21, and a young woman doesn't want to hang around for 2 weeks waiting for their brilliant miner boyfriend to turn up about that everybody's sick of hearing about. And I could really imagine that for her it would have been really lonely.
Yeah.
And we had a breakup, and I sort of realised, I'd said to myself, all right, I'm going to do one more year, I'm going to earn my money, and then I'm just going to have to leave. Again, because, following the breakup, when you're coming home and you don't really have anyone to come home to as well, that made it quite tough. And I think for myself, it was this idea of telling myself, well, I'm doing this for myself, but maybe I'm sacrificing my life a little bit for my partner. I'm thinking about my future. But if you lose sight of that as well, it wasn't going to be good for me. I just thought, I'll set myself a year, and that's when I finished up.
Do the whole year? Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
It's a long countdown, that.
Yeah. I know someone who's on a 5-year countdown, and I think they've got 2 to go. It's getting there.
Oh, right.
Like, that's the thing. Time does go, but it's how you deal with it in between. So in that time, in that year before you left, did you start making plans about what you were going to do next? Did you have a clue, or did you what did you do?
I sort of said that I was probably going to go to university. I had no real idea exactly what it was going to be. What I was trying to do is I was trying to make sure I was comfortable, that I could probably have 3 to 6 months off without worrying about getting a job straight away. So I prepared for that, and I spent that year really saving my money to make sure that I was comfortable enough. Mm-hmm. But then I probably had another well, actually, I had a whole year off after that, and I did a little bit of travelling before getting into going to uni and sort of applying as a mature age student, which was really good. But what I had was, which is very similar to a lot of when we were coming back to what we were talking about, the golden handcuffs, is I came back like many men with no skills. I had work experience, but you say as a truck driver, I couldn't drive a truck on the road. I couldn't drive a truck anywhere else. It was really just for a mine site. So you're really coming back. For me, I was coming back absolutely just a blank slate again. And for a lot of guys who work, they work that job for a long time. And if they are doing, the truck driving or charge up or something along those lines, those skills don't transfer. So I did have a year off where I had to really rethink, what am I going to do now? And I had to reskill, because your tickets from site don't transfer.
They don't. That's right. And especially because you were so young when you started, so you hadn't even been and worked and done something like you were saying before you got out there. See, with me, I didn't start till I was nearly 40, so I had a few skills, even though by the time, I got to the point of wanting to leave, most of those were outdated, and all of the skills that I had from mining, like you say, can't be transferred. I couldn't go drive a grader in roadworks or anything because it's not a what, I didn't even know what they're called, a construction grader on the roadworks grader, the council grader. Yeah. I just drive them on a mine site, but you can't drive them in town. I didn't want to either. I wanted to do something totally different. Now I just talk about it and do other things. So what did you choose to do? You went back to uni. What did you study?
Well, I was going to do environmental science, and
to make up for being a miner for all those years, go and save the world now.
I think I was also thinking it's a growth area.
It certainly is, isn't it?
But I'm not really a sciencey sort of person. I'm more of an arts sort of a person. So I did a philosophy unit, and I did some English units, and that's the funny thing. I just said, well, I'm going to do something for fun, and so then I ended up staying, and I did my honours, and then I did my PhD in literature, and then I ran some units. I did tutoring. So yeah, something really obviously very different, but definitely in terms of my personality and the way I think, that was what I, the contrast. That's probably what I am suited to, compared to my mining days. They were just so different. So I did that for a while, and then my partner and I had a child. She's a clinical psychologist. She earns a lot more money than I ever did, so now I'm stay-at-home dad.
Oh, wow, what a journey. What a journey.
Yeah.
And so I can see, my brain's running here. So you've gone to uni and you're studying all this literature and a bit of psychology, and you marry a psychologist. Is that when you started to really reflect on your time in the mines and all the relationships and all the stories and all the personalities and how it all worked and went in with each other, and the reflections on people and how we handle it and how we don't? Is that what made you start thinking, I should write a book about this?
Yeah, well, you probably have the exact same experience. You've got lots of little stories that you tell your friends, and if you get a bit of a laugh out of them, then it's probably an all right story. Little bits here and there, and I know it sounds a bit cliche, but everyone says, "Oh, you should write a book about it," and I was sort of like, "Oh, yeah, I doubt it." But then what I also started to see which was just so fascinating for me, is that everybody started talking about psychological problems in fly in, fly out work. And it was sort of like, for me, I was just thinking, well, this was happening decades ago, and it was almost like, well, everybody started to wake up and realise that there were some issues surrounding working away. So I thought, well, maybe I'll write a book about my experience, give my insights about how I handled it or how I didn't handle it, and sort of giving a bit what I really want to do. And this is what quite a few people have said they really like about it, was giving an insight into what it's actually like to work in fly out in a mine site. You know, what a donga looks like, what meal times are like, the difficulties of trying to communicate with your family. I mean, when I was doing it, that was before the internet, so just had the pay phones, and you had to stand around and wait for a pay phone.
The line.
Yeah, and I mean, and just those little things that people don't understand what their life is like. And then people are sort of saying, oh, I don't understand why there's some mental health issues arising. And as I say, there were quite a few, well, not a few alcoholics. I would say there's also now there's seemingly a couple of drug issues that are coming up. There's also the divorce. There's alimony. There's a lot of breakdowns in families, and it's not a new thing. But I just thought, well, I know a bit about this. I can think I could write something about it. And I also felt confident in that probably not many miners get the opportunity or think about it. But I thought, well, I think I could actually write this and give it a pretty good representation. I didn't want to have a sort of a ghost writer or tell my story to someone. They'll write it up for me. I felt confident enough that I could do it myself. And so it was a number of things, but the idea that in sort of in Perth we started hearing, and we hear across Australia that there are issues in the mines, and I just thought it was hilarious. There've been issues for a long time,
Cheryl.
And I just thought, well, yeah, I can give my insights. And sort of explain and maybe help other people actually understand why there might be these issues.
And also coming from a male's perspective and someone who was so young as well, and then now reflecting back on it, I think that gives it even more power behind the story, because it's not just someone who wants to write a book to make money or anything like that. There's personal reasons behind it, and it's because you care, and it's because you did it, and you want other people to know what it's like, what it can be like. And that's why I do what I do as well, because people just think it's get a job in the mines, it'll fix everything, I'll be rich, I'll get all that time off, and that's all they know about. Like you say, they don't even know what the inside of a donga is, and they had all those inquiries into suicide and FIFO and stuff, and a lot of it came out that with the induction processes and stuff, they don't even know what the camps look like. They don't realise they're going to be stuck in a dog box for 2 weeks. You might not talk to anybody. All of the, one of my episodes is all about laundry etiquette and what it's like when you go in and someone's taking your clothes out of the washing machine and dumped them on top, and stuff like that, and what they do to them. One in that story, they said they put a stubby inside the washing machine to break because of they'd taken their clothes out, so they threw that in there. And so now here's a go, guys, don't do that. This is what you should be doing. And this is what could happen. And how are you going to deal with that sort of shit when you're stuck out in town? You think the whole crew hates you, your missus has left you, what's the point? And sadly, people decide there's just no point. And it's horrendous, it's horrible. And they're supposed to be making the onboarding processes much more friendly. But I haven't seen a great deal of change, not from my point of view over here anyway, yet.
It's a really strange community. You're stuck out there. You have no vehicle to go anywhere. I mean, you're especially when I was in the Tanami Desert, there's nowhere to go. You can't just sort of say, even if you've got a push bike, it's 45 degrees outside or something. You can't go too far.
Yeah.
So you have to really get along, but that's not the case necessarily. There's also it's for me, it was a very masculine culture. It was, if you didn't quite fit in with, if you didn't want to go to the pub, and I in the end, I wasn't really going to the pub because I was saving my money. And, you can be, I didn't really feel like I was ostracised, but at the same time, you start having sort of these maybe divisions between some groups.
Yeah.
You got maybe some mates who are going to the gym instead, and that's the thing. It's such a small group. I always think the funny part is that you also wake up at 4:30 in the morning, you go to the mess, and you have to say hello to 30 people, and and everybody's friendly, and you say, but then at the same time, I know that I was in an absolute mood some days, and I had to be, they might say hello to me and be generally friendly, and I might just sort of give them this really whatever sort of a
Grunt.
thing, and I thought, well, I'm not making their day any better either. But you can't escape it. You're sort of like, well, we're stuck here together. You better get along. And there's just so much about the camp that beyond it, people don't really understand. It's which I always thought was quite interesting. And you don't. I know for myself, I didn't necessarily talk about it when, and there's not much to talk about on your day when you're working as well. One of my girlfriend that I had, one of my first girlfriends, I'd ring her because it's always one way. She can't ring me. And she'd ask me, so what did you do today? And I'd just say, well, I drilled for 12 hours. I ate my dinner. I'm calling you, and then I'm going to go to bed so I can try and get maybe 6 hours sleep. And I do that for 2 weeks. So
Groundhog Day. I'll do the same tomorrow, Groundhog Day.
Well, and so then if she told me maybe about the fun she was having, that'd probably make me a little bit more depressed, and I'd say, I'd rather be there. I mean, when you're 18 and it's Saturday night and you're on night shift, that was the greatest tragedy ever.
Absolutely. And a big part of my sister's message, my listeners know her as the Hard Hat Mentor, and she's done mining since she was 18. She's now younger than me, and she won't mind me telling anyone that. She's 30 years on, we'll say. But she's got that personality where she's the annoying, bubbly one that makes everyone say hello, and she's singing a little song while she's making mess, and people think, who's that crazy lady, But if you're going to be there, try and do what you can to try and help it get you through it. And that's what gets her through it as well. And she knows she's helping other people around her. And I always like to think of the cleaners and the people in the kitchen and that as well, because they're away from their families, they're working. And you see people just throw the plates at them, the one collecting all the dishes, piling up and up and up. And I always made a point of sticking my head in and giving them the plate and saying, thanks, mate, see ya, like not compliments to the chef usually because, but thank you for being here and just giving them a smile. And I've left little notes in my donga at Easter and left them a couple of eggs and thanks for cleaning my room. And they're like, oh, thanks for the eggs. And it's just little things like that we can all do in whatever your way is. I don't expect you to be like me and my sister necessarily, but at least for people to start thinking that it can get really crappy out there for people. It might be you that it's getting crappy. So what can you do to turn it around when it's starting to get like that? Do something stupid, sing a song, do something, I don't know, something.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because I can write a book and I can talk about how maybe unhappy I was, and then I realised I haven't actually given any, what could I tell people to do, or what insights have I got? But I think that's when on my fly out day when I was going to the mine, I was, feeling pretty sorry for myself. But if I was doing it now, probably what I'd really work on is I'd have to figure out something that excites me about going to the mine, which might be, say, if there was an indoor cricket pitch, which we had at one of the mines or something like that, is having some sort of competition that was going to be on after work, or if we're going to the gym and I'm going to catch up with one of the blokes and And, we've set ourselves some goals. So it's almost like, well, I'm looking forward to getting to work so we can get back into that, which is, it's like the indoor beach volleyball. That's what people have in their lives, and they sort of, it's how they get together. And I think you need to have those sort of things when you're going to a mine site as well. It's not just I'm going back to work, but having some sort of having that life and recognising that you have that life and making something more of it. Having goals, setting. They didn't really have little things like, I suppose you could have like quiz nights or something. I don't know. It's very hard to be specific, but there has to be some reason where you're going back and go, I'm looking forward to getting into this again. Just outside of that, out of the job, you do have a little bit of time to do that sort of stuff, and making the most of it, I suppose, is really crucial. Because the less you're thinking about home, the better as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not kind of like that. It is your crew, especially when you're on the same crew for a lot of times. Different if you're going to different sites and stuff, I suppose. But they become family. So it's like you're going to see other family. Oh, I wonder how the wedding went for JS. Hi, JS, one of my best listeners. I wonder how the wedding went. Oh, I saw on Facebook he had the baby. She had the baby. His granddaughter. I can't wait to see all the pictures. So it's catching up with your crew as well, or sharing with them now, because we have our phones and you can take your photos out and all of that. The big fish that you caught on break. I know a lot of the guys on crews I've worked, so it's been all about fishing and shooting pigs up here. Sadly, I hate, and they know I hate that, guns and knives and stuff, but don't show me any pictures of pigs. They knew that with me. Go away, I don't want to see, I don't care. Yeah, but Leanne, look how big it is. No, get away from it. Oh, Central Queensland. Gotta love it. But I know there have been guys, and I've spoken to a couple recently actually, who don't feel like they can talk to people out there because they don't go fishing, they don't go pig hunting, they don't follow footy, they haven't got a family, so they haven't got things to talk about with the crew, so they just don't, and they feel ostracised. They don't go to the pub and have a beer. So, but if you are one of those people, you shouldn't have to change to be like that, but find what is it while you're out there that you can do that you enjoy. It might be, I get to go out there and finish this book in peace away from everyone, or I've got, or I'm going to study, or because you get time in your dog, get time in your truck, you get time even at the crib hut with everyone's dribbling all their crap that you don't want to know about. You can just lose yourself in a book. How do you think I started my podcast and my website and everything? I'd just take out, when it rained, open cut, so when it rains we don't work. They knew I was taking over half of one of the long tables, spreading out all my lists, got my iPad, I've got stuff to do here. They'd laugh at me, and they'd always end up coming over and give me some sort of something or other I could write about. So find your thing, whatever it is, to get you through.
Definitely. Yeah. That's good advice I would give myself from 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's good. That melts my heart. So any young fellas listening, I don't know how you found it, but good. Keep listening. So how was it 20 years after you'd left you chose to write the book?
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah.
I had a bit more time being at home, so I had a bit more time to think about it. I had a friend of mine who I went to uni with. She published a book, and I read it, and it was really inspiring, and it was a fantastic piece of writing. And I just said, I should have a go. It was just impressive, and I never really necessarily felt like writing about Australia necessarily. But then I realised I've got this very Australian story in me, and her story was, it was Perth-based, and it was just really gave her this wonderful insight into WA life as well. And I thought, I should have a bit of a go and not try to emulate her, but she really inspired me to try. So I think it was a matter of time. It was a matter of reflection. I think being a dad and thinking about my son, and trying to understand him. And then I'm looking, and one thing I tried to do in the book, I'm looking back at my younger self and trying to understand him, why he was like that, because he's very different to who I am now, I feel. So it was a good amount of time to sort of say, okay, I can reflect more on who that person is. And I think one of the things I'm hoping with the book is that some maybe teenage boys read it and they get a bit of a, maybe have a bit of a think about who they are as well, because teenage boys, in my own experiences, having been one, can be, dickheads if they want to be.
I've got an 18-year-old grandson, and it's like, oh, yeah. 18.
So they think they know the world. They're reckless. They can be pretty lazy, and that's why I wanted this book to sort of show that I'm trying to understand myself, who I was, and also sort of show, well, this is what the world can be. Maybe you need to be thinking about who you are, how you're going to fit into it, because an 18-year-old boy does not slot nicely into at a mining camp. Generally, they've got a lot to learn, and they have to learn it very quickly. They don't make concessions. On the drill rig, I owe a lot of credit to my driller Lee and the drill fitter Dave, who I talk about in the book. They really got me into shape quickly. You learn very quickly, and you have to become a good worker. You have to focus. You have to realise other people are relying on you. It's I think a lot of maybe younger men need that sort of experience.
I think so too. Bit of some role models while you're young, and I'm sure they also taught you some work ethic. Yeah,
and it was really crucial that you learn some things that you maybe won't do yourself, but. It's the really interesting thing is I look back at that kid really, and I'm quite impressed about how strong he was in the end. And when you move away from mining and move away from fly in, fly out, you kind of lose this sort of strength or this outer armour that you have, that you develop, and the sacrifice, and I look at him and I'm really quite impressed, and I don't know if I could do that again. And also I think I'm really lazy compared to him these days. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but I look at him and I just say, he worked pretty hard, and he did pretty well for himself. I'm just looking, I don't think I'm like that anymore. We have very different goals now, so. Yeah, so I think it was really important you to learn that very quickly at a mine site, and you can't escape it when you get there.
How old are the kids now, your kids?
I've just got the one. It's a boy, he's 7. So it just started year 2 this week.
Oh, that is a lovely age, 7.
Yes, yeah. He's still cute enough to get away with some things.
Yeah. Totally, and they're like sponges, just want to know everything. And I know that we have to start wrapping up shortly because our stay-at-home dad has to go and pick up his wonderful son from school. I've got a couple of questions that we might just finish off with, if that's all right with you. You got time?
Yeah. Got at least half an hour if you
All right. All right, cool. When you were in the mines, what did you do with your old PPE, your hard hats, high-vis shirts, boots? Did you ever used to wear them on break, fishing and gardening and stuff like that, or you never did?
No, the only thing I brought home with me was really, I think, a couple of tools that I had, which I think I stole in the end, because they're the tools I used every day in my job that they gave me, and I just brought them home. Well, I think it was just a shifter, really, and my crib bag, but everything else just stayed there. One thing I did, I wore my, when we had, we got some shirts that we had printed out with LTI. One of them was 150 LTI days, and another one was so many metres drilled. And I wore those on my break a lot. And I think it was funny when I was when I was doing that, I was actually really proud of working. And I was really, I think for me, because I had that time off between school and starting, it was really hard not working or not having work, not knowing what you're meant to be doing with yourself. So as soon as I started working, I felt really proud of that, and I felt really proud of those achievements. I felt like a bit of a company man, and I just sort of wore them around. I was proud of it, I think I like the idea of being a part of that crew and contributing to that. Was really good. We didn't have high-vis, didn't exist when I was mining, and which is just the really funny part about it is our overalls that we wore underground were dark green, and they had or dark blue, and they had a couple of reflective strips. And really, I look at it, and it was so dangerous because it's just about invisible. I mean, you're in a dark environment and you're wearing a dark grey, dark blue or dark green. And you just wore coveralls, full overalls. So they weren't really fashionable outside of the mine site. The knee-high gumboots, that didn't really come in handy anywhere else.
Yeah.
All your hard hats, everything like that was pretty much property of the site, and it just stayed there. And I never even thought to bring it home.
I asked that question because my mum planted some petunias in some old hard hats and made hanging plant hangers, and they looked really good. And I've kept all my old hard hats. They're kind of in the pool room, And up here, you see people all the time. I know they work in the mines and they're mowing their lawn or they're going fishing and they've got their frickin' high-vis shirt on. And I've always thought, come on, man, you've been wearing it for the last week. Most of us up here, week on, week off nowadays. And why? And they think, because, I don't know why wreck a good shirt, but you have old shirts for that. It's funny. I interviewed someone a couple of days ago, and he's a Gold Coast fella, and he said, you never see anyone down here mowing the lawn in their high-vis shirts either. So
we had, we call them your civvies when you fly in, you're wearing, because we didn't, because our outfits were just full overalls. You wear your home clothes to the mine, and I just remember I'd pack them away and I'd keep them very nice and clean. Because on my day home, when I'm coming home, I wanted to sort of just feel like, I'm going back to my normal life, and I wanted to wear my normal clothes, just sort of, So I quite enjoyed just wearing normal clothes. I don't mind wearing my overalls. They were pretty good if you want to do some work under your car, but they're not really for walking the dog.
No. You'd look a bit weird going fishing in them too, probably. You'd have to cut the sleeves off or something to be cool.
Exactly.
A tip that I give people too is when you're on site and say you do go to the gym, or I suppose at the gym you wouldn't wear your work clothes, but if you're going up the bar or something, go home, have a shower, put some normal clothes on, just so you feel like you're having a little bit of a real life, instead of you go and have your beer at the wet mess before you even get to your room. You've still got your crib bag there. You may or may not get and have food and then go to your room. You just feel like it's work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. So at least have some clothes that you put on at night or in the morning, That's a thing I like to say. And definitely when you're travelling to and from. But some people, I don't know, I think over there as well, but if you fly directly to site and you're on site, you're on the bus, you start work your first day, a lot of times nowadays, and they have to wear their work clothes on the plane. That would suck.
Yeah.
Sit at Brisbane Airport all the time. You can tell the new people too, they got the very shiny clothes and the shiny white hard hats and, proud as.
I wouldn't say that the civvies that we wore were necessarily impressive. They were more fashionable.
They don't have to be impressive, just homely.
It was really just tracksuit pants, thongs, and a lot of flannelette shirts.
That's exactly what I mean, though, Brett. Whatever you feel comfortable in, it just doesn't work, you know. I see so many people and they don't even bring any other clothes. What? Come on. For a lot of years I was in a mining town and had a room in a mining town. So we'd go up to the local club and have tea sometimes or whatever, or a few drinks, and they go, oh, I'm not going up. I've got to wear my clothes. What? You haven't even got a T-shirt. Come on. And they drive home in it because we did drive in, drive out. So you've got a whole car. You know, I used to load my car up with all my stuff. I had heaps. Oh, and now what about your steel cap boots? Have you got any stories around those? Like, have you had any critters inside them? Have you ever left them home? Have you ever had blisters? Have they got stolen? Someone had theirs stolen the other day. Mm.
All of our gear just stayed in the change rooms. So you go to you go from the camp to the mine, everything's already there. Sometimes I had to, with my gum boots, you had to walk out into the sumps to go and retrieve a pump. So I'd have to make sure that I'd take my boots off, take my socks off, put my socks in a safe place, put the gum boots back on. You walk out there, come back, and then just pour out the sump water and put on a pair of dry socks. That was nice.
That's a great tip. Take your socks off. I like that.
Yeah, well, tinea is rife.
Yes, yes. I hear bamboo socks are good to help with tinea.
Yeah, well, you need to protect your feet, especially if you're with the service crew. There was a lot of that. So but it's with the steel caps, they were just gum boots. They were very uncomfortable. When you're walking around on rocky terrain, they didn't fit necessarily snugly, but they were great for. You didn't have to worry about where you walked. That was pretty good, I suppose.
Yeah, they can be good. So you were saying that you'd go from camp and then all your stuff was on site, which is very much an underground thing. And did they do your laundry as well?
No, we had to do our own laundry.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yeah. You would bring your overalls back, but your helmet, cap, lamp, your belt, self-rescue boots, they all stayed there. But when I was working on the service crew, you had to do. You always worked out how you could get more overalls, so you do less washing or less times of washing.
That's gold. That's so.
But on the service crew, sometimes I would use 2 sets of overalls a day. So pretty much nearly every night I had to do some washing, or at least every second night, which is I always found a little bit stressful because you needed to have. You wanted a nice set of overalls for the next day, but on the service crew there's a lot of dust and that thing, you get really covered in it, and ideally you don't have to wear them again, or you wouldn't want to wear them again. It's a very hot job because, say, if you're extending a vent bag, you have to turn the fans off, so you're working in areas where there's no ventilation, so you start sweating and there's dust on everything, and so it was always a lot of washing to do. And I understand the etiquette and waiting around to chuck them in the dryer. And a couple of times I've come back and they've just sort of chucked and then they've fallen on the ground into the dirt again or something like that. It's
and it's the suckiest feeling, isn't it, when you're just that freaking tired, you're ready for bed, you got to wait for your washing. Because you don't want to go back to the laundry in the morning or whatever, It's I used to hate that feeling too. But I like the idea of, and we've done this, like I was mining for 13 years and every year we got our issue of clothes. So you end up with a lot of clothes. So it was good to have more than you needed. So like you say, if you didn't want to wash, you didn't have to. But there were plenty of times I did, especially when I changed sites and it's a different shirt, and stuff like that. So you've only got 4 of them and you're doing 7 days, you're going to have to wash at some stage. Yeah. Can I ask you a question about with the underground guys, I've spoken to a few underground people on the podcast, and so you, after work, all go and have showers before you go back to camp. How did you find that as a young fella? Because I've heard of lots of shenanigans in the showers, in the underground boys.
Well, I don't know about shenanigans, but it was something I wasn't really prepared for. My first mine, they did have cubicles, which was nice, and I got changed in the cubicle, and everybody thought I had something to hide.
Because they were all getting changed outside, just
there was just a lot of naked men. And but then at the other mine site, it was just a line of shower heads, so no cubicles. So you just had to get over yourself, and if you're not feeling comfortable in your body, it's too bad. But the good thing was there was probably a lot of bodies that are a lot worse than your own, so. You could,
they don't give a shit, so why should you?
If you can't, there's no point being vain. You just get over it. From where your gear was probably a good 15 metre walk to the showers naked. It was just it was a very, very odd thing that But after 3 years of being there, I just you're over it.
Yeah, and I brought that up. So that's yet again another thing that, say, a young fella listening to this, I could go out into the mines, might not even know that that's the case, that happens. So if you've been in a footy team and done all the showers and the rah-rah together and all of that, I think they have that sort of bonding. But out in the mines, they might not realise that that's the situation, and like you say, just have to deal with it.
I think it was everybody was too tired to be bothered with annoying anyone or doing having too much fun in the showers. But it's one of those areas, and like with the job itself, that if you've got any hang-ups or you've got any fears or your concerns, you really just have to get over it really quickly. And if you're not that type of person, that's when you're going to struggle. If you're not going to ask questions, you're not going to, or you're going to be shy. That's a normal. It's a very normal personality trait, but there's some experiences and things that you're just going to have to do, and if you feel like you can't do it, then you really don't have any alternatives, unfortunately. So and it's if you're not, it's going to be a very long and hard time at the mine if you don't sort of adjust.
I think it's really good too if you can find someone early on that you feel like you can open up to a bit and confide in, like to have. Yeah. I had one very special mate, g'day Rusty. We used to sit on the back step together, take off our boots, talk about the day, have a beer. And I could tell him anything, he could tell me anything, and he'd been doing it a lot longer than me. This was later on. I'd already been doing it for a while, but it was around the time that I was struggling the most in mining, I guess, and except for when I first started. But I won't go on about that because my listeners know that story. And if you can find someone like that, because you can tell your partner at night, but like you say, they haven't got a clue really. They're not there. You end up saying, "Yep, I drilled some holes. I ate my food. I came home. I'm talking to you. Then I'm going to bed, and then I'm going to do it again for the next 13 days." You need someone that you can say, especially if they're on your crew and they understood what happened. You say, "Well, I don't understand why that happened. What about that guy, especially, as an operator, and why did it end up," or whatever it is. It could be something that happened or why someone said something, or there's so many variables of what it could be. But if you need to talk, we've got all the Are You Okay and Mates in Mining, Mates in Construction, Beyond Blue. Everyone is saying we have to open up and we have to talk. But if you're stuck out in the middle of a freaking mine somewhere and you haven't got internet, you haven't got a mate. You haven't got anyone except your head that can talk back some really wild stuff at you at times. You need to have something, some strategy. So if you can find someone early on that you can open up to, and be prepared to open up to them as well. They might say, mate, if you want to know anything, if you're struggling with anything, come and see me, and you don't feel like you should. They wouldn't have said it if they didn't mean it, because they know it can be shit and hard out there.
Yeah. Dave, the fitter, one of the loveliest things he did for me very early on was he went and got me some black plastic and some tape to put over my window for night shift. And it was one of those things where I wouldn't have asked for it myself. I wouldn't have really, I was a bit of an idiot 18-year-old, and I wouldn't have thought to have done that. And he, it was just a little gesture like that made a big difference.
That's huge too. That's such a big thing. You need to be able to you need those blackouts for night shift.
Yeah. And and that's there were probably for me. I think there were only really a few moments in the whole time I was doing it where I had a really deep D&M with someone, or otherwise it was very quiet. And for me, one thing I talk about is I messed up quite a few times. I'll admit that. Just really silly things. I left and as a truck driver, I left the tub up one time, and I was charging down to the portal, and luckily there's this thing that caught the tub and ripped it down, and that could have been really bad. And then the next day I have to host this meeting beforehand to tell everyone about what I did.
About how silly I was. Really?
Yeah, so that whole night you're stewing over it and you think about how it went wrong. You come into work the next day, and just in case nobody had heard about it, you have to lead a meeting to tell about what you did and how you're going to fix it. And it's one of those things that it just either it can go a number of ways. Either that people look at you like you are a clown, and are you there? Are you putting people in danger, or or they're going to come up to you and say, "Oh, yeah, I would have done that." Some blokes would probably say, "I would have never have done that in my life. What's wrong with you?" That happens.
You'll never do it again if you have to do that meeting.
Yeah. And I think I hosted about 4 or 5 meetings. That's the thing. They give you the duty.
You have to own it. That's what they're saying, isn't it? Yeah.
And then they say, well, what would you do differently? And I said, well, I'd tell the fitters to make sure the tub up alarm's working.
So that was exactly what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, so can you drive off with the tray up? And because I know in our trucks, some of them you can't. You can only idle, or the tub up alarm, tray up alarm we used to call it. Yeah. So it wasn't working.
In my service book, I'd written down on there, a cross not working. It was on a night shift. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock. That's the thing. That sort of it was sort of like, well, we need the truck, and we're not going to be able to fix that alarm. So, and it might have been like that for a couple of days. So,
and that's the shit bit, right? They say, you've got to tell us everything. And then they go, but production says we need that truck, and there's certain things where and I'm pretty sure on most sites I was at, tray up, alarm not working, stand that truck down, because we work around high voltage cables a lot up on the surface if you're around drag lines, or they're on the ground. But, there's just lots of places and if that's not working, we weren't allowed to drive it. That's the same with you for that exact sort of reason. But you can have brain snaps. I had quite a few. I didn't have to lead a meeting about them, thank goodness. But one guy, I'll just say one story. This guy, he was a digger driver, but he was in a truck for a couple of stints. This one night his digger was down or something, and he was getting really tired, and he went to the digger. He was starting to fall asleep, right? So he's backed in under the digger, thought he heard the horn, took off, gone up the dump, put the tray up, put it down, and gone back. He never got loaded. Never, ever got a load. Never got a load. And then I've heard another story of a guy who got loaded, went up the dump, went to the dump, shut his eyes at the tip head, drove backed in under the digger, still fully loaded. So, you know, these things can happen, and they were all on night shift, I might say. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's a long time to concentrate fully, for sure. But the biggest thing is own up to it. I agree. Own up to it.
I fell asleep at the portal while waiting for another vehicle to come up, and I was there for an hour apparently. Just parked up. People calling me on the radio, flashing their lights in my eyes. Nobody actually opened the door or anything, but it was about an hour before I woke up.
Well, can be that we've had that too a lot of times. You know, trucks lining up, waiting at the digger, and old mate's not moving up. Okay, coming around you, you're not getting that positive communication, but everyone knows he's passed out. I'm going real wide, right, coming in. And then it gets to the point, well, we've got to make sure they're all right because they might have had a heart attack or something. But you're not allowed to just hit the emergency stairs and like ladder thing at the bottom to get the stairs to come down and walk up, because what if he all of a sudden wakes up and takes off? He could run someone over. So there was a procedure for that, and you had to drive a truck in front of that truck, high beam on and everything, and so that even if he did wake up, you could, or she couldn't drive off. So it used to happen. One time it happened to me, well, the main time, I was on the water cart hosing out a stinking drill in the middle of nowhere, like a bit of an exploration drill, I suppose. And the cleaning people had rocked up with their sperm suits and all of that, and they wanted me to come over with a big water cart, give it a good hose off with a cannon and everything, and then they had the hose and took it on and were hosing it off, and then fill up their little pod, and then they do whatever they do, and I'd go back to work. And it was around 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I was sitting there, and I had to keep watching because he, give me the thumbs up, and because you had to keep your foot on the accelerator to make the pump work for the water to come out. They had the hose at this stage; it wasn't the cannon. And so I'm watching, and then the slit your throat stop kind of signal, so I'd stop. Anyway, next minute, I wake up and the door was open. He's going, "You can stop now, love." And I'd fallen asleep with my foot flat on the accelerator because I was over there for 3 hours. I was starving, hungry, I was tired. High maintenance. I told you, stinking drillers.
As long as all that happens on night shift, it's not so bad.
Well, yeah, that's right. But a good point is that fatigue can set in at any time, because a lot of people will come back and they're really tired and it's their first day, and people will say, "You just had 7 bloody days off," but you don't know what happened on those 7 days off. Might have hit a kangaroo on the way out here this morning, or you don't know. It's if you're tired, pull up, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we really should start wrapping up now. I have one final question. What is your special place, Brett, when life turns to shit? How do you personally handle tough times? What are your strategies to hang out there? What do you do?
I really like to exercise, and my favourite thing I get to do, which you don't get to do on a mine site, is I like to go mountain biking, and I used to do a bit of indoor rock climbing as well. I'm a bit sore for that these days, but the thing I like about those is I can't think of anything else because I have to concentrate on not falling off things. So that's a good stress relief. Anything that can stop your head thinking about things, that's what I like to do. So mountain biking is probably my favourite thing.
Do you wear the gloves and all that?
I wear knee pads, and I've come off my bike many times, and you need anything when you get a bit older, anything to help you get back up is important.
Bit of protection, because they hike along, don't they, those bikes, especially downhill.
Trees don't move.
No, and rocks. Ouch.
Yeah,
I used to race motorbikes, and I'd see them peddling away. I'm like, bugger that. That looks like too much hard work for me. Same sort of terrain. It might as well be a motorbike track. Looks awesome.
Well, you got to concentrate on those too.
Yeah. At least you'll be nice and fit. That's good.
Trying.
Yeah. Well, in closing, Brett, do you have anything you're super excited about right now that you'd like to share, or is there anything else you'd like to say to call this episode complete for you?
Oh, well, I'd probably like to just say thanks for having me, actually. That's probably what it's been a long time coming, and I know you've got a lot of other people you're trying to see, but I'm really happy that we've finally had a chance to have this chat, and it's good fun. This is my first more informal chat about it, which I quite liked. Yeah, and so I really thank you for that.
Oh, I'm glad that we finally got around to it. And it's not always other people, it's just time. I'm just trying to get them out. I'm lucky to get one out a month, but at the moment I'm on a roll. I might even get 3 this month. So I'm trying. But thank you. I've really enjoyed this chat. And I will share links so everyone knows where to get your book. Or have you got a website you'd like them to go to?
Yeah, I've got a website, Facebook page, and a couple of things there.
So it's just aboyminer.com, is it? I've got it over here.
Yeah, I think I'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's all right. I shall find it and leave a link in the show notes. Well, it's time to say goodbye now. We could chat all day, and I have been known to. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you. See you.
Well, what did you reckon? What a fantastic chat. We covered so many things, and I know that this conversation is going to help so many people, those already in their mining journey, families, wives, people trying to get in. Hello to all my wannabes. I love you, and I'm trying. Yeah, fantastic. I loved it. And as the editor, I'm really honoured that I get to listen to it quite a few times as I'm tweaking and trying to make it the best quality that I can for you. So remember to buy the book, A Boy Miner, and show your support to Brett. And also, the book covers a lot of other things as well. And in his words, without Mad Mumsy putting her 2 bobs worth in. So head over to the show notes for all the links that we spoke about in this episode, which will be madmumsy.com/beers68. And now more than ever in this coronavirus world, as I record this, stay safe, be real, be special, and look after your mates, for we only live once. Cheers.